Morning, everybody. Afternoon, wherever you're at as well. Hope this finds you well. Today, we're talking about social responsibility. And there's just a couple slides that I want to showcase, and they're from UMass Global. And they give us a chance to talk about a subject that we hear quite a bit about, but don't often either understand or commit ourselves to either following along with social responsibility or understanding both the positives and negatives. There are positives and negatives of each. For instance, social responsibility, corporate governance, good corporate governance, even ethical conduct all have a cost. Nothing is necessarily free. So if you want to be a good corporate citizen, if you want to be socially responsible, you're going to have to commit some monies to the social good. And at the start of the discussion, we want to talk about two sides of a coin. We'll learn later that the primary reason that organizations exist is to make money. Some people think that that is wrong. But the primary reason people work is to make money too. Unless you're in that fortunate position that few are, where money is not either a goal, objective, or a need for you, then you're going to have to find something that will help at least pay your bills, at least allow you the standard of living that you feel you need to have. So first and foremost, in relation to both an organization and its employees, the person you work for and you yourself, you're going to have some revenues or monies. As I often say, organizations call it revenues, employees call it salary. Either way, you need money. Second aspect is that you do want to be a good person, good citizen. I know few organizations that don't at their heart want to do some good, that don't want to give back in some way or form. The problem becomes how much you want to give back and what you give back. Do you want to give back your time after you are working all day, or do you want to go and play tennis or some kind of game on the computer? You feel the need to want to donate some of your time or donate some of your money, but you also want to be able to enjoy your life and spend time with your family and friends and just have fun. So corporate governance and social responsibility all sound great, but when you have to couple that with the cost that it takes, that what you have to spend to be that type of person, then people and organizations start to waver. So that is the core of what we talk about. It sounds good, but when we have to commit to doing it, it's much more problematic. There's many more layers of not just controversy, but layers of not just concern, but layers of there's things I'd rather do more, or I'd rather spend my money more than doing that. We all think that working to clean up and or save the environment is important. But when you ask people how many people have actually spent time cleaning up the environment or donating money to create a better environment, the numbers fall drastically. Doesn't mean it's not of concern, or doesn't mean it's not important. But as that old saying says, when the rubber meets the road, which means when you actually put boots on the ground, when you actually go to committing your time and your money to something that you feel is important, many fall off. So that is a background of why social responsibility and corporate social responsibility is so complex. Do we care about corporate social responsibility? Of course. In fact, most of us won't do business with an organization that isn't seen as, in some ways, a good corporate citizen. If you're a corporation that has a history of taking advantage of your customers or of the environment or of society, for the most part, you're going to lose quite a few customers. Some customers just care about the bottom line. They care about how much it's going to cost to buy your product versus someone else's product. But for the most part, people want to do business with organizations that are seen as I would just call them good companies. You can say that they're corporate citizens or that they contribute to society. I just call them good companies. I've often asked people, not just customers, but employees, well, what does this company commit their money to? And to a person, they can't say. There's few organizations that you know of that you can readily say what they spend their money on to make them a good corporate citizen. If I was to ask Walmart or Target or Dick's Sporting Goods or Coca-Cola, almost every single customer won't be able to say where they donate their monies to outside of making money. There are some that are closely associated with some type of social responsibility, corporate citizenship. Maybe the most famous is McDonald's. McDonald's spends their money on the Ronald McDonald House. And these are homes, charities that McDonald's supports for those families who can't afford to stay near a hospital when some member of their family is sick. They're all across the country. And McDonald's does a great job of supporting them. To keep the theme of restaurants, Wendy's, which is a hamburger chain, they spend their money towards adopting children. Wendy, the actual person Wendy, of which the restaurant was named after, was adopted by her father, Dave, and so they support that charity. So there are some companies that are very closely associated to one type of charity, and they spend quite a bit of time and money supporting that charity. But by and large, those businesses that we frequent, that we support, aren't well known for supporting a specific charity or even a specific cause. But we have an impression of that company as being a good corporate citizen. Why? Mainly because there isn't as much negative or any negative aspect related to that company. If there is, no matter what they spend their money on, we look at them as maybe not a good corporate citizen. Whether it's corporate governance or social responsibility, we often ascribe good or bad to an organization based on what we read, based on what has been promoted or advertised in media. Does that mean that it's always true? Of course not. However, if it gets reported, then we often make a judgment based on the way in which it was reported. So corporate citizenship, social responsibility, often has to do with the type of press or publicity that a company has. There's very few organizations that are going to spend public money, which corporate money is often public money, not in the sense of government, but people donate, investors donate money to an organization, and they want to make sure that they get a return on investment. Positive press can lead to more sales throughout a community. So it's important that good public press contributes to this idea that you're a good corporate citizen, that you have some social responsibility. That may be fundamental to social responsibility. Is the type of press and publicity that you receive positive to the impression that others may have of your organization? Again, I think that's fundamental. Donating money and supporting causes within the community that contribute to that type of publicity is important. That's why, in almost every case, a company will develop and then promote some type of press release that says, look at what we've done, look at who we are, look at who we try to be, look at who we support. The landscape is littered with organizations that have become too political, and as a result has affected some sort of their perception within the community. In fact, media companies are central to that. Media companies are continually promoting organizations as good or bad, decent or not decent, based on who they support politically. That can be extremely dangerous for a company because you're automatically eliminating a certain percentage or portion of your audience. Those that don't subscribe to your political views may not support you economically. Again, going back to the media companies, you can clearly tell what side of the political spectrum CNN and Fox News subscribe to. Therefore, those that watch those shows ideally subscribe to their political viewpoints, but not others. For corporate citizens, they absolutely positively do not want to be in that type of arena. They don't want to intentionally carve out a section of society that will not support them financially simply because of their political, ethical, or socially held beliefs. You want to be in some ways plain. As an organization, you want to be plain in terms of socially and political viewpoints. You don't want to intentionally irritate some segment of your customer base that may then say, I choose not to do business with that company because of what they believe. Instead, what you want to do is you do want to create a good and decent organization that provides a good and decent and fairly priced product to the customer base, but with at least some of your money devoted to improving upon the world in which you live. Corporate governance and corporate social responsibility all comes down to that. And we'll talk about another slide in a second, but I can't overemphasize that point. You don't want to offend any part of your population, not just your customer base, but your population. Your population is important instead of your customer base because you never know when your customer base will expand and be part of your population. They may be a future customer, not just a current customer. So you want to be wary and mindful of who you support, of the statements you make, because those that can be deemed offensive can result in the winnowing down in a slimmer customer base than you would want. Maybe not today, but certainly tomorrow. Does it mean that you shouldn't stand for certain things? Absolutely not. There's nothing wrong with standing for things that are deemed good and decent, honorable and noble. That is not just good corporate governance, but it's positive social responsibility. But when you wade into contentious areas that are not universally believed upon by society, then you start to segment your company and their products into certain customers that subscribe to exactly what you do. That could be limiting for your company, and it should be an area that should be avoided. One more slide that I mentioned I wanted to talk about, and that is this pyramid about corporate social responsibility. It's a pretty darn good pyramid, which is why I show about it. Most of these videos I try to talk about from my perspective, working as a consultant, working within industries, but then also showcase some of the most important aspects that you may want to consider. I try often not to rely on specific strategies or theories that have been utilized in the past. Therefore, you can learn from my perspective, but also these theories that may have been utilized in the past. A theory, by the way, is one person's idea. It may be grounded in great research, but it's still one person's idea. This from Kanicki is, I think, a fantastic chart. It doesn't necessarily state you must do something, but it gives you some idea to understand social responsibility. Notice how it says corporate social responsibility. I like to just say social responsibility. Because remember, we may want to work for an organization that's socially responsible, We may want to buy from a business that's social responsibility. We may also want to be a socially responsible person. But at the end of the day, we have to make a living and we have to buy certain products. Are we going to spend 10 and 20 and 30, 40% more for a product that is deemed to come from a socially responsible company? The short answer is most of us would say no. Research and financial returns show that we as customers, we as employees, are willing to give up quite a bit if we can get a good deal on a product. We're willing to give up quite a bit if we could work at a company that's going to pay us a considerable amount of money. It's almost like a spectrum. How far along that spectrum are you willing to go, giving what your return is? We do like to think that, oh no, we're going to do good. We're going to be socially responsible. But realistically, it's to a point. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive to be a socially responsible person, an ethical person, that we shouldn't strive to work and support companies that are at least attempting to be socially responsible. Before I talk about this chart, let me just say one or two other things, which is we do want to support a socially responsible organization, and we do want to work in a socially responsible employer. We ourselves want to be that type of person. But it in some ways depends on how far along that spectrum the organization is. If an organization is clearly not socially responsible, if they are damaging the environment, if they are abusive to their employees, it's almost impossible for that organization to stay in business over the long term. It just won't happen. However, if a corporation is understanding of their responsibility to at least give back and to be a good corporate citizen, then for the most part, the organization is going to be supported by their community and by their employees. We, in general, do want to be seen as somebody more good than more bad. But it has to be within the arena. The organizations that we support have to be seen as they're pretty good. Perfect, no, but pretty good. And at least in today's environment, we want to support an organization that is not seen contrary to the way we want to live our lives, the way we want to be seen. That means that they need to at least wade away and not become too involved in political and social viewpoints. That limits your audience, and therefore it limits your customers. That forms the basis of good corporate citizenship today. To be more good than bad, to at least attempt and try to not just obey the laws, because we all do that, but to be a good corporate citizen that believes that at least some of your monies need to be given back to make the community in which we all live better. Margaret Thatcher made a great statement. She was the former prime minister. And she says and I'm paraphrasing, there's really nothing wrong in principle or action with making money or even being rich. The problem is what you do with it. And she believes that you don't have to give all of it back, but to be a good citizen, a good corporate citizen, you need to at least give some back. That some is relative. It's a percentage. Some give more than others. But it's okay to advance yourself financially, but help others along the way. And I think that's a good model to follow. Help yourself, certainly, but along the way, help others too, at least to a degree. If we all did that to a degree, can you imagine what kind of society we have? This pyramid talks that we all have an economic responsibility as a corporation to be profitable. There's no doubt about it. Investors give money to an organization to get a return. They do not give money to an organization so that the organization does not make a return, because that return goes to the investors. An organization will not exist over the long term unless it makes some money for those that are investing in the organization. How much they give back is up for debate. But what isn't up for debate is that organizations stay in business because they make more money than they spend. Even nonprofits make more money than they spend. The second aspect of this pyramid I would eliminate. It says that we have a legal responsibility. Of course we do. That is intuitive. We don't need to state that organizations have a legal responsibility. If they don't understand that they do, they're going to be out of business. It may not be today or tomorrow, but at some point, if they don't understand that they have to follow the laws, they're going to be out of business. It's no different than us in our personal lives. If we don't understand what the law is and we need to follow the law, eventually we're going to have to pay the price of not following the law. The second aspect of this pyramid, which reads as the third, is we have an ethical responsibility. That means that we have to be ethical. Ethical is a sense of conduct that is deemed right by society. And we do have this ethical responsibility. As we move from the economic to the ethical, then we get into we must do something economically, and then we should do something ethically. The last part is philanthropic responsibilities. We want to be a good corporate citizen. If I was to do this chart, which is why I like to showcase this in this discussion, I would just have two aspects of it. I would have the economic responsibility and the philanthropic responsibility. I would just have two colors, maybe the purple and the green. I think the ethical responsible is to be a good corporate citizen. So I think those are the same. And as far as the economic responsibility, it takes into account legal. You're not going to be a long-term economically responsible organization if you don't follow the law. Eventually, you're going to go out of business. So to summarize, organizations exist because they make money. What they do with that money moves you up this pyramid to the top. Most, whatever word you want to use, of that money needs to go into supporting the organization, both for its investment in the future, which includes employees, and also return on investment for investors. But then some of that money should go to promote society, community, to be a good corporate citizen. Organizations will benefit over the long term, not only because they would attract customers to an organization that's deemed a good and decent citizen, but they create a better society in the future, a more expansive, even profitable society in the future that over time, all organizations, not just the ones that promote it, all organizations will benefit from. Organizations that expand their footprint, that grow their organization, are going to employ more people. They're going to pay more taxes. And the society, through those taxes, is going to benefit through roads, bridges, schools, other aspects. So over time, if all organizations felt that way, then the economy as a whole will grow, and then society and communities will benefit from that. That is what I think is a good corporate citizen. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the day.